This one's a little bit closer to actual reptiles than the last few videos that we've done. And this one is about, honestly, probably one of the most famous fish in the world, and that's the piranha. So we all know about piranha and its subsequential different dimensions of viewing realities and bust sizes. But with that being said, that's they have a very well-known reputation, right? Everyone knows about piranhas and where they live. But with that being said, they have a reputation that isn't really well deserved. And this is actually one that I know a little bit more about because before I really got into reptiles, I was a big fish guy. I had over 20 aquariums in my house at one point. Little bit out of control at several points, right? So, and even then, I never actually had piranhas, but I knew quite a bit about them because where I lived, they were actually legal to keep, mostly because of the fear about them, just like a lot of rules about reptiles and like lengths and of like the large constrictors and stuff like that. So when we think about piranhas, obviously the first one we think about is the red belly piranha, right? The scary schooling fish that has feeding frenzies and shoals and tears up the animals and leaves nothing but skeletons in seconds, right? Not so much. So the actual piranha itself is actually in a very large group of family of fish that are part of the tetra family. That's right, those neon and cardinal tetras that we all have in aquariums, same family as piranha. Basically, piranhas are just regular fish that happen to have a pretty scary overbite. So they come from mostly the Amazon basin in South America and separate river systems, including like the Orinoco and the São Francisco rivers. And for the most part, every single species is pretty much isolated to individual river systems, with a couple of the more populous species like the red bellies are kind of more spread out. With that being said, there is a lot of debate right now in the scientific community about what is and is not a true piranha, but I'm just going to go ahead and just say like there are at least 30 species of piranha. None of them get very large. Most are in, like the kind of 8 to 10 inch range, with some of the larger ones being like the red bellies that can get over a foot long. And the largest species of, extant species of piranha is the white or the San Francisco piranha, which can achieve lengths of up to 28 inches. And at one point over, 10 plus million years ago, there was an extinct species of piranha called the Mega Piranha, because scientists are very creative, and that due to their dental dentition that they have found, because that's pretty much all they have to go off with, it seems like that this type of piranha could achieve lengths of close to 40 inches and weight over 20 pounds. But again, they're not around. We're mostly talking about the red belly piranhas.
Everybody knows about, everybody knows what they are, and their dentition or their teeth. And I've seen that up close, and it is very amazing. They are very sharp teeth, the ability to bite very quickly.
And so a lot of the misinformation around piranhas stems from Teddy Roosevelt. So Teddy Roosevelt, back when, he was off over trying to start his own world wars, in between that and dealing with his crazy snake obsessed daughter, he would go out on safaris to Africa, to South America, all over the place. And when he went to South America, because he's a celebrity, because he was the ex-president, he was shown things to give like big Amazon scary entertainment. And so what happened when he went down to one part of the Orinoco River in Paraguay, some local fishermen dammed up a section of stream during the dry season when he was there. And for several days, they weren't allowed to leave that area. And so the piranhas got kind of hungry. They essentially starved the piranhas. Then they took an old sick cow, pushed it into the river, and then there was the feeding frenzy that we all think about that did consume the cow. And that's where Teddy Roosevelt is famous in his book for saying that they are the most vicious and ferocious fish in the world, and that even with the scariest, like the barracuda and the sharks, only eat things smaller for them, piranhas to always go after the larger ones. And that's where a lot of that fear and misinformation comes from, which was a staged event that Teddy Roosevelt wrote about back at the dawn of the 20th century, right? They're actually classified as omnivores because a lot of species, including the red bellies, have been observed in captivity and in the wild eating a lot of different plant matter. And that's not to be confused with the pacu that we've all seen that very often gets confused as a type of piranha. It's in the same family and group of fish, but it's like their cousin. It's not actually a piranha. They have an entirely different set of teeth and they get significantly larger. That's why they're actually considered omnivores. And the amount of plant diet versus protein, be it fish, mammalian, birds, whatever may have you, varies depending on population, on time of the year, on the stretch of river system that they're actually on. It all varies. And so that's why they're not actually considered true carnivores. So with that being in mind, so when I brought up before that feeding frenzy that we all want to happen, it very rarely happens. It usually only happens under times of great stress for the fish, usually when they are isolated, when it's hot out during the dry season, when there's not as much food and there's less water, so they get crowded, they get stressed, they get cramped, and that's when you get that feeding frenzy. The fact that, like, you know, the idea that you can just throw a drop of blood in and it'll get them going crazy.
And you hear about, you know, piranha in the wild, how they'll predate upon fruit as well in the wild. And really the only times you get those frenzies is during the dry season, when you have these you know, lower bodies of water where there's more dense populations of fish, you know, closer together. And you get a wounded or injured animal that will, you know, come into the water, or even a dead animal. And that's when you get those frenzy feeds, is when these fish are really in desperate, dire situations. At least how I understand it.
Attacks on people do actually happen, but not for the reasons that you might think. It's because of what we kind of already said. During the dry season, where it's very hot out, more people go to the water to cool off. And so already, if you have not as much food for the piranhas, and they are a very populous fish, they're one of the most abundant and common type of fish in South America, period, specifically in the Amazon basin. And so when you have a lot of them, not as much water, not as much food, plant or animal, that's when you have incidences where attacks on humans do occur. And by attacks, I usually mean small, minor bites, usually on appendages like fingers and toes. Like during one summer, there were over 100 attacks on humans, but it was during one of the hottest recorded summers in like the past 20, 30 years, and they were all on digits and toes. Actual fatal attacks that happen are very rare. There have only been a handful in the last 20 or years, usually involving people who are old, sick, tired, or intoxicated. Like in 2011, there was a drunk man who fell into the river who was consumed, or unfortunately during boating accidents or car accidents where people become trapped or drown underwater, and during the struggle it will attract their attention, which usually happens in incidences of like young children being boats capsized, or in vehicular accidents where people will be knocked unconscious or be trapped where they can't escape. So there are more or less really other very unfortunate things that happen that result in that because of the wrong place at the wrong time / a great opportunity for the fish. With all that being said, they're actually kind of a scaredy cat type of fish. Like, they all school together. Like, we think of those schools of piranhas, but they school for the same reason why every other type of fish does it. And that's for their own protection. The Amazon is a super scary place, and everything eats piranhas. Caiman, freshwater river dolphins, giant otters, cormorants, people, larger fish, they all eat piranhas. So with the exception of some types of species like the white piranha of the South Francisco or the black piranha, they all pretty much just school together to hopefully depend on survival, just like large schooling fish out in the oceans and in other rivers. They school for their own protection because everything eats piranhas. They just, again, have a very unfortunate / interesting overbite.
They are so skittish and so reluctant to frenzy feed. It's hilarious and honestly super disappointing. We have tried multiple occasions to try to get our piranhas to go through the feeding frenzy, like what you see on TV, and eat a cow in 60 seconds or whatever. So we've taken rats, we've taken whole slabs of fish, rabbits and thrown them into the tank, dumped them into the tank, and the piranha are so afraid of it. I don't get it. I don't understand it. And I've talked to a few other piranha keepers now, and they say the same thing. They're so skittish, so reluctant to eat. So how we would feed them, really, I would stand there, chop up a bunch of fish, scallops, things like that, just little bite-sized pieces, and I'd throw them in there one at a time, and the piranhas would kind of hide, and then they come up one at a time, grab it, swim back or retreat, do the same thing over and over. And then when they were full, they would just stop, and fish these fish pieces, and their food would just hit the bottom, and then I'd be like, okay, they're done, and that was it. That's I was like, this is just like feeding any other type of fish. It's kind of ridiculous.
Their bite is no joke. I do have a tendency to downplay this a little bit. They have very sharp teeth. They have interlocking little zigzag teeth that they are capable, with their jaw power, to bite very rapidly and very powerfully. The black piranha specifically, that also has a very scary denotation to its name, has one of the strongest bites of vertebrates in general. Nothing like a crocodile or a hyena, but it has a very strong jaw bite force, which attached to very sharp teeth is no joke, so you don't want to mess with them. It's actually why fishermen in South America, while yes, it is for tourists interesting and fun for them to catch a piranha, local fishermen actually think of them as a nuisance because they will steal fish. They have to use like steel wire as the first like few hundred feet of their lines because piranhas will bite through them, and if they accidentally catch a piranha, they can get bit trying to take it off the hook. So in general, piranhas actually themselves aren't that scary of a fish. There's also, every year we hear more about local ponds and rivers being found with piranhas in them. They have actually been unsuccessfully introduced to a lot of different populations around the world, and a lot in the United States, but they never successfully actually managed to establish. And a lot of times they're actually misidentified as a pacu. Usually what happens is people think they look like a piranha, they get it, and then because they do get so large, they throw them out into the water systems, although they never again managed to survive because of the climate of most of the United States. But that being said, there have been a couple populations of piranha found in one particular lake in Bangladesh and in one river system in China, which again more than likely are done by people releasing captive animals. PSA, don't release your pet of any kind, please. Fish, dog, snake, whatever. Please don't do that. And we're back. Done with sidebar. So they have been introduced successfully in a couple different places. They're not really sure as to why. More than likely it was the introduction of just a smuggler, poacher, private owner who was fearing reprimand, and they released them to avoid that. But they don't really survive very well. And as well, in general, piranhas don't do as well in captivity as they do in the wild. They usually don't live as long, and they usually don't get the same size. As well as the actual, the schooling predation. Even if you had a very large aquarium, I'm talking hundreds of gallons, and had a large school of even red-bellied piranha, it's very unlikely that you would manage to get that sort of, schooling feeding frenzy. They're basically just cute little giant tetras that, unless you really manipulate the scenario, you're usually not going to have an issue with piranhas in aquarium or in South America in and themselves. We've all seen the river monsters and the other episodes of things on Discovery and Animal Planet where people just go through literally a created man-made pond filled with nothing but piranha, and they go through entirely unscathed. So this, once again, is fact versus fiction, 100%, not 100%, but definite fiction. We don't have hordes of piranhas that are just eating tourists and skeletonizing people and animals, and I think in one of them even they just started eating boats and stuff too. I don't know if that's true, but I think that's what was happening in some of them. So it's not really a thing. They really are just another regular fish. They just happen to have some nice teeth on them. And if you're thinking about getting a pet piranha, make sure you check with your local ordinances because they're illegal in a lot of places. So please don't be one of the people that ends up contributing to the bad reputation of exotic keepers in this country, the United States, or not. So sorry, again, had to do my quick little sidebar, again, stand on my soapbox and be preachy. But hopefully you enjoyed today's video. Please, if you can, like and subscribe. Check out the full playlist of all of this year's Fact versus Fiction and the rest of the Spooktacular. It's all in the same playlist. Helps the click-through rate, helps YouTube know that I exist. And thank you so much for everybody who does watch these videos. It's been a great time doing these things. I love kind of getting away for a little bit with the usual reptile content and talking about other animals that are also entirely unrepresented correctly, misrepresented, scared, have really bad reputations. I like to be able to present that to everyone as well. And it's pretty obvious about the piranhas, but some of them we don't always necessarily think about. But again, sorry, rambling a little bit. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, let me know down in the comments. Hope you're having a great day. Have a happy and safe Halloween, and we'll check you next time.